advisors. A simple commercial fact. The local media play an important role, as we know. Have they been supportive of your efforts to try to get the better image of the city centre and its attractions as a shopping destination, etc.?
Well, I think the Belfast Telegraph in particular has stepped up to the plate. I think all the newspapers, our local newspapers, have tried to cover it in a responsible way. Obviously, when we have so many international media in Northern Ireland over the past few weeks, beaming pictures of riots and violence, that certainly does not help. And we all know how difficult it is to attract foreign direct investment. And I have to say, those signals, those images being beamed across the world, do us absolutely no favours at all. And they lead to the widespread misconception that the whole of Northern Ireland is like this. And I'm not surprised that there's maybe a knock-on to the whole island of Ireland. And obviously in media terms, bad news sells.
Thank you.
Yes.
Frank, Deputy Fianna, a question first, so if you want to respond to that, and then I'll take in two more questions.
Well, I think what we've tried to do in this document is outline 50 solutions, because I think that if we are to create a 21st century town and city centres, if we are to create a revitalised retail sector, then we need a radical change in policy. Both in terms of what the executive does, and indeed, I have to say, in terms of the view of how traders, how retailers do their business. I think we have said that we need to see a greater joined-up approach by the executive to urban regeneration. It doesn't help when you've got 3 government departments in Northern Ireland responsible for town centre regeneration. We've got to look at that. But we have made progress on rates. We now have the Small Business Rates Relief Scheme extended for the second time. That will come into play in the 1st of April. I think we have now the empty premises relief, which is a scheme we lobbied heavily for. What that is that if you're a new business and you take over an empty shop or empty premises that's been empty for a year, you only pay 50% rates for your first year. So we all know that the first year of any business is a critical year. So if you're only paying 50% rates for your first year, that is a help, and that's helped approximately 69 new businesses, from new restaurants to new shops. I think we also need a proper joined-up vacancy strategy. We need an effective audit of vacant sites in town and city centres, and we need more engagement with some of the retail chains, engaging with them. And I think this is something particularly the local authorities, and obviously local authorities that are going to be created in the next year or two, which in Northern Ireland will have substantially more regeneration and planning part, but engaging with retail chains, saying, look, we have this empty shop, we have this empty building here, this would be perfect for you to locate a shop or a store here. We need more pop-up shops. We need to be helping, how do we create the next generation of retail entrepreneurs? How do we support them? I think it's about getting car parking right. It's about getting a whole range of things right, and it's all hopefully in the document. But I think the biggest change has to come in the mindset of traders themselves. They've got to stop seeing online as a threat and see it as an opportunity. They've got to ensure that they have world-class customer service. They have got to embrace new ways of doing business. And the reality in retail is the only constant is change. And if retailers don't embrace that change, then sadly they are going to go under, because it is a constant process of reinvention, of innovation. And we've got to fundamentally rethink how we do town and city centres now. And that's why that we're concerned that the hospitality sector is being hit so hard, because an integral part of any town and city centre is having a strong nighttime economy, is having a strong cafe culture, where we make our town and city centres destinations. And that's why we're particularly concerned that out of the 2 sectors that are being hit, our hospitality sector is being hit the hardest. And that's why that particularly this marketing campaign that we're trying to get off the ground is very much targeted at the hospitality sector. But obviously, overall, what we want is footfall in Belfast City Centre. And to put it into context, if Dublin was going through what Belfast is going through, I think every deputy in this House would be wanting to say how we can solve this problem from whatever part of the island they're from. So I think that it's about all of those things, and all I would say is that if you look at what we're doing on Twitter and Facebook this weekend, we're going to use the social media to galvanise people to come in, not just from Belfast, but from any part of this island, come in, support us in Belfast City Centre this weekend.
Okay, thanks, Glyn. Sean Crowe and then Pat Doherty.
I want to congratulate whoever came up with the whole concept of the sit-in idea. I think it's really taken off, and I've seen reports there of a restaurant beside Naomi Long's constituency office and the difficulty that proprietor was having in relation to it, and people, an act of solidarity and all the rest. But you mentioned some of the businesses. There was one business there that lost 95,000. Is that sort of in a particular corner where the protests are held? I don't, if you don't want to identify the company, that's sound, but it seems a huge amount. Is part of the difficulty, I suppose one of the messages maybe we should ask you is in relation to, has there been any instance involving tourists or people visiting, in relation to some of these things? And because you're not getting that message, and if there hasn't been incidents, well, it's important. I think you should say that. The whole idea of the masks, these masked individuals coming in, can be intimidating, and regardless of where it happens. But if there's 40 or 50 people masked up, that itself, and I know there's been signage put up and so on. But what's the next step? What do you suggest in relation to that? What are your messages? What's your organisation's message to politicians in relation to this? You're saying that people need to sit down, need to talk in relation to. I think there's also, we need to understand that Belfast is a shared city, and that we need to be cognizant of that in relation to it. And again, lastly, I suppose one of the things that people were saying to me was that one of the reasons they weren't going into the city centre was that aside from the obvious thing of the protests and so on, but the uncertainty in relation to transport, public transport, and the importance of that. So people aren't going to go out to enjoy themselves and maybe socialise or whatever if they're not sure of getting home. So I suppose there are some of the things that yourselves and the police service need to look in relation. But again, I suppose people are, from this side of the border, looking at the things and seeing the very, very small protests, but having huge effect both locally, but and also on the city itself. And what is the police? What are the police are saying in relation to their response in relation to this whole area? And I suppose lastly, you said to us, people visiting and so on, but is there anything specifically that you're looking for this committee to do in relation to what we can do in relation to maybe support that sit-in or that particular campaign, or publicise what you're doing?
Okay.
As there's a number of questions there, so if you want to take them, Glyn.
Yeah, I think to answer your first point, Deputy Crowe, there's been no tourist or shopper that has been injured as a result. And I think that's a very important point to get across. And we met with the Chief Constable last week, and that was one of the first things that he said. And I think there are issues about trying to get policing right. And obviously I recognise it's an incredibly difficult position for the PSNI to be in, where they're at times caught in the middle. They're trying to ensure roads are kept open. So I think there are things the police need to do. And I think it's something that I understand that they are looking again at their tactics and all of this. In terms of Belfast as a shared city, you're absolutely right. It illustrates why we need an effective shared future strategy. Because ultimately, when you strip it all down, what a shared future is about an economically sustainable future, because companies are not going to invest in divided societies. And if you look at some of the worst aspects of poverty and unemployment are actually in and around the many interfaces that we have in Belfast. So, what we've got to try and address is balanced and sustainable economic development, which doesn't just benefit one community, it benefits all communities. And I think particularly in East Belfast, we need to do more, in particular areas like Short Strand, Lower Newtownards Road. I think there's a lot more we need to do to capacity build to ensure we get the right skill set in those communities so they can take advantage of the developing Titanic Quarter. and the other opportunities that are out there. And I know in particular, coming from not far from that area, I know that the educational underachievement is a big issue. I think in terms of public transport, yes, this is an engagement we have had with TransLink. I think that they obviously are very keen to do what they can, but ultimately they've got to balance the safety of their drivers. And there have been a number of buses that have been hijacked, and it's an incredibly difficult situation. But I think the top priority is obviously to keep the roads open. And I think this is a problem in that it gets sort of widespread that every road in Belfast is blocked. Every road in Belfast is not blocked. There are some main roads that are, but most of the roads, most of the main arterial routes to the city centre are actually open. It's just that when this situation happens, there's misconceptions, rumours, the rumour mill starts, and then people don't go out. I think what we've got to do is challenge that we have some fantastic retailers, world-class restaurants, and there'll be lots of offers on in Belfast these next 2 weekends, and we hope that will entice people in. But what we've got to try and do is get this issue off the streets. The political parties all need to sit down and resolve this issue. If the protesters obviously have grievances, I think the only way to deal with the political problem is to let the political parties come up with a political solution. I think that's the only way that we're going to effectively tackle this problem, and I hope that we can continue to do this. And we're not going to solve the problem of reduced footfall in the city centre until we get the protest issue. And it's not for us to comment on causes of this, or if you like, the big P politics on why this happened. But it is, as business representatives, important we do point out the disruption to trade.
Thank you. Pat Doherty.
Welcome, Glyn, here. Thank you for your presentation. Sort of two questions. You spoke about Intertrade Ireland, which is one of the 6 implementation bodies that came out of the Good Friday Agreement, probably one of the very successful ones. Maybe if you could elaborate on that, because Brendan, I think, said earlier that the media image has an impact in Ireland as opposed to Belfast alone. And second question is, has your association had any face-to-face dialogue with Belfast City Council?
Well, really, just to take the point about Intertrade Ireland, really, what ourselves and Retail Excellence Ireland have been doing is having a dialogue about how we can develop and promote the retail sector on this island. What are the policy challenges to retail both sides of the border? How do we develop the retail sector on the island of Ireland? How do we make the island of Ireland recognised as a major international retail destination? So one of the things that we're looking at is between our two organisations setting up a North-South Retail Forum between ourselves, engaging with Intertrade Ireland, engaging with the administrations in Belfast and Dublin, and looking at what are the challenges there and how we can engage that. And that's very much an initiative that we as two business organisations are taking, because the reality is that there's no such thing in retail terms as a border. Shoppers will go wherever there's a bargain. And I think that's a reality. And the interesting thing that we had this Christmas is that normally we have lots of southern shoppers coming north into Belfast. This year it was the other way around to some degree. That I was talking to retailers in Dublin who had an enormous amount of northerners and people from Belfast that were shopping. Now, I think what we've got to try and do, well, how do we develop all of that? And we're at the very, very early stages of that. And I've had an initial meeting with the new Chief Executive of Intertrade Ireland, and obviously, we're at the early stages of this, but that's one of our projects for this year that we do want to set up. In terms of Belfast City Council, yes, the Lord Mayor hosted a meeting of all the different agencies and key players around the table in the Lord Mayor's parlour last week. What we're envisaging is this programme of this campaign fund would be administered by the Belfast Visitor and Convention Bureau, and they would be the lead organisation in this, and we expect that Belfast City Council will have a role in funding that campaign as well. So we have had that engagement. I thought it was obviously helpful that Belfast City Council struck a 0 rate as well. So I think, yes, we are having that dialogue, and it really, it's really what we're trying to do is bring solutions. We can dwell on this problem all we like, but what we've got to focus on is solutions. We think that this fund, as a short term, in terms of the short term, hopefully will start to deliver results and get us that increased footfall that we need. Thank you.
Okay, Glyn, thank you. You're okay. Everybody, Joanna, putting you on the spot now. And you're,
I had a couple of questions.
Yeah,
all right, okay. Well, first of all, I'd like to thank Glyn for coming to us here to us today. And I was just wondering, I don't know if anyone else has asked you this, but what was the situation regarding business in Belfast before these riots started? And had it improved? Over the course of the peace process, I presume that it had, but if you have any figures about that. And also I was curious as well in relation to the Titanic exhibition, has that had, quantifiable impact on retail in Belfast?
Well, I think that certainly the retail sector in 2012, the reality is that consumer confidence is still very low. People are just not spending in the same way that they are. So there were huge challenges in 2012. But I have to say that, Belfast still has a very, very strong retail offering. We're, working hard to ensure that it's a destination, that we have a strong daytime and nighttime economy, as well as a good mix of retail. We had a very successful continental market, which is, very important to help generate footfall, because anybody who goes to the continental market will tend to go to other shops when they're in. I think we're looking at developing things like Belfast Restaurant Week and Independent Retail Week. So there's lots of ideas that we've been trying to do, and I think that it is very and I welcome the focus in Belfast City Council, in particular, to try and get more independent retailers into Belfast City Centre, because they obviously add something different. So I think that, yes, it wasn't without its difficulties, but yes, it is a very strong, I think, retail offer. And I think, of course, many of our towns and cities in Northern Ireland have very strong retail offers. We still have a reasonably strong independent retail sector that does offer something different. I think in terms of Titanic, the Titanic surpassed all expectations in terms of its visitor numbers. I think I think it's a fantastic opportunity. I think there's a bit more work we do need to do to connect the Titanic to the rest of the city centre. I have a slight worry that it's almost a destination itself, that people go there and then they don't go into the city centre as much. So there's a bit of job of work to do there, which I think we can do. It's only a very short walk away. But the Titanic is a fantastic thing for Belfast. It really is a fantastic building. But I hope as well that there's a lot more work to do to develop in the Titanic Quarter. I hope that we continue to build in that area, for instance, through the work of Northern Ireland Screen, to make sure that we get more TV and films being shot there. So I think there's still a lot of potential. And I think I'd like to see a lot more work done in terms of developing Titanic Quarter and ensuring that communities in Short Strand, in East Belfast, that we can match jobs up and we can match the skill set up to make sure that those communities benefit as well. And I know that they have, but I think there's still a fair bit more work that we do need to do. But I think the Titanic Quarter and its future development is very exciting. We've also got the Royal Exchange as well, with fantastic opportunities in the Cathedral Quarter. So I think that, we're developing this concept of Belfast being a city of quarters, and obviously that means not just four, but whether it's the Titanic Quarter, whether it's the Cathedral Quarter, whether it's the Gaeltacht Quarter, whether it's Queen's Quarter. And I think all that there adds to a city of quarters, a city that offers something very different, and a city that ultimately has to realise that it's a shared city now. It's a city of many different cultures, not just unionists and nationalists, but it's a city that I think that has something to offer. And I think we've made good progress. And yes, the last couple of months have been a setback, but rest assured, the city will bounce back.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Glyn, thank you. Unless there's anybody else wants to add anything, we'll bring the session to a close. But can I just say finally, in conclusion, Glyn, we appreciate you coming here, and I suppose if there were a blueprint for coming up with a solution to a lot of the problems on this island, it would already be rolled out. But I suppose to an extent that's the blueprint that we do have is the Good Friday Agreement. So your point about Irish reputation, we take that point. You know, with the instantaneous nature of media and access to media internationally, I mean, it's not just TV. You check up YouTube, and you know, you have a readily instantaneous viewing of the incidents that have taken place over the past month or more. So something that's happening in Belfast or in Pat Doherty's constituency in Castlederg or in Derry, it affects the whole island, and that's how serious we take this particular crisis at the minute. We as a committee, obviously, we don't feel that we have the solutions as a committee, but what we aim to do and what we have agreed to do, and I would like to emphasise this publicly. If there are groups on either side, be it at a community level, business level, political level, that feel that they want the space to offer their observations and solutions, we as a committee will provide that, and we're more than welcome to provide it. We feel strongly that there is a sense of urgency around this, and we need to act proactively. And we are here as a committee. We are an implementation body, North and South. We have a diverse membership here, and we have an appetite to not alone facilitate, but to be with the people in Northern Ireland at the moment that are affected by these incidents, and to show our support. And in acknowledging that trust has been broken to a degree, there still are trust lines there that have built up over the period since the Good Friday Agreement in 1998. We're confident as a committee that things will improve in the future, but we're also not naive to believe that things will work out on their own. There will have to be different interventions, as you said yourself, at a political level, no doubt at a community level. There's people working very, very closely, and I would like to acknowledge the role of all people and all community leaders at these interfaces, and the religious leaders that have been involved and quite proactive over the last number of weeks. And we wish you well in your own efforts and in your own campaigns. And we're absolutely delighted that you came down here today. And we certainly, as a committee, would like to just show our support to you and to your different members of your organisation. And just to say, finally, sometimes, over the last number of years, there were people who were saying we can't be complacent about the peace process. And complacency is something that's back on, the agenda. We certainly won't be complacent, and we offer our support. And as I say, we're offering ourselves as a vehicle or a mechanism for other groups to come in and meet with us and offer their suggestions and their observations, and we will continue to do that and pursue it into the future. Now, Deputy Conlon, you were speaking in the Dáil. You said to me in the Dáil that you want a couple of questions. You're free to do so.
Sure. First of all, Glyn, thanks very much for coming here today. It's very important we get an opportunity to speak to you. You did say that divided societies are bad for business, and that's obviously the case. And you also made the point that it's a political problem and therefore needs politicians to take hold of the situation and provide solutions. I mean, from a business perspective, it's very, very damaging. I mean, it's from your perspective, what can politicians here in this committee in the South do, or how can they help the situation? Because when we met the loyalist groups in Belfast, what I found most striking was they felt that they had a disconnect from their own politicians to a large extent in the north, and they felt that they needed outside help or help from the committee here to try and get needed engagement from the committee in terms of getting funding, in terms of progressing matters. What in your view is the most immediate thing that can happen to try and address this? I know you're not a politician, but I mean, in your view, what can politicians do actually in the short term to try and address these issues? Because they are societal issues, and they are macro issues, and they've been around for a long time. So what can they do in the short term to try and address these issues immediately?
Well, Chairman, I'm very tempted to give you a glib response. Come to Belfast for a pint this weekend. And maybe that doesn't sound as cheeky as it does, but I think that maybe it is getting the word out there that Belfast is open for business. It's not a blockaded city. It has fantastic retail and hospitality offering. And, you know, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to come down here is to get that message across, because obviously, you know, many of my members, many of the hospitality sector, they rely on trade from the south. And it's important that that continues to be the case, and likewise, vice versa is the case. So I think if there's one message that you can put, it's encourage people to come to Belfast this weekend, next weekend, whatever, support the traders, to come and shop, to socialise, to enjoy a drink, enjoy a good meal. And I think, and that's maybe not necessarily a political thing, but I think that probably is what we need the most. We need footfall, we need people to support us, and I think that's one of the main reasons why I'm down here today. And I think if you can do that, Deputy Conlon, and your colleagues do that, then I think would be a good job of work.
Yeah.
Have you thought about a public relations campaign? The way you're speaking now, like
Yes.
listening to you, it's very appealing the way you're saying it, and very enticing, because I love Belfast myself, actually. I love the city, not to mind just love the atmosphere and everything about it. Are you doing anything about it?
Yes. I mean, basically what we're hoping to do is that this marketing budget we have will be it will be the Belfast Visitor and Convention Bureau will be the lead organisation in terms of this. Now, I've seen some of the images that they're hoping to use, and you know, obviously, whether it be 48 sheets or whether it would be through the social media, it's a very strong message, and I think at the heart of it is appealing to Belfast citizens' civic duty. Because I think the first stage of this campaign is about, first and foremost, about people in Belfast not to be put off by the protest, but to come in, particularly obviously this weekend and the weekend after, the payday weekends, come in, shop, socialise, enjoy the crack. I think that's that's the first stage of the campaign. So some very detailed work. I know there are a number of different agencies. There was a briefing of the press in terms of what are the core themes of the campaign. So I think yes, we have. It's a very good campaign, which we hope will run over the next month or so.
Excellent.
Phase 2 will be obviously a little bit trickier in terms of the international markets. And that is going to be probably a little more difficult of the two. But in the short term, it's about appealing to citizens of Belfast to support their city.
What about, it's through the chair, what about doing radio conversations like with John Murray and Pat Kenny? You know what I mean? Yourself.
I suspect that at some point that will be factored into it in terms of, I mean, there's been ongoing engagement with all of the local media outlets, and of course it's important that our newspapers, particularly in the north, realise that they're going to lose out in terms of advertising that these businesses go under. So I think that's a key, and obviously as well for companies like UTV as well. But I think that, on the most part, in terms of local broadcasters, have been very responsible, and for the most part, RTE has as well been very responsible how they've reported it. It does concern me about, you know, from CNN to all of the, in terms of the damage that is doing, and it sends the picture that the whole of the north, the whole of Belfast is one big rat zone, and nothing could be farther from the truth. And I think that's another big challenge. But I think we can do that. Big opportunities this year that we can, whether it's the City of Culture, whether it's G8, World Police and Fire Games. So we have big opportunities. You know, we're very much committed to try and get the devolution of corporation tax to the Assembly, so we can go out there and make ourselves obviously very attractive to foreign direct investment. My worry is that the impact this is having on potential investors. So in one sense, we reinforced the need when we met with the Secretary of State is to make sure that the whole issue of corporation tax is pushed up the agenda, because I think if we had that power and we were able to be competitive, and obviously if you look at the success that the state has had in foreign direct investment, very difficult times, if we can get a slice of that, then, you know, because what we do need to do...
Are totally supportive
Yes.
of you getting there. On this committee, we're totally supportive of you getting the North getting
Well,
the same corporation tax.
Yeah.
It would be for the whole island, for the benefit. We're 100%, so anything we can do to help you on that.
Well, I think, to the Chair, it is very much in the Prime Minister's inbox at the minute, so my feeling is that I think the issue's been kicked into the long grass, which I think is disappointing, but we will see. But I mean, all of the political parties, all of the entire business community, every business organisation in the North has supported this. So, but I think the issue of Scotland and Scottish referendum is a major factor in it, which it shouldn't be. But that's the reality of where we are.
Okay. On behalf of the committee, Glyn, I'd like to thank you most sincerely for travelling and being with us today, and for also your helpful engagement as well. So thank you very much on behalf of the committee, and the meeting is adjourned until the 31st of January.